Hi, everyone. Today we have with us three special guests. Kurt Michael, great to see you, Kurt. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Ronnie Holste,
Yep.
thanks for coming.
Thank
Jay Fenwick, always great to see you.
Thank you, Terry.
And so as we come to the election here this year, we have three Board of Education seats here in Watauga County that are open. And obviously there's 6 candidates running, and we have the great pleasure of having 3 of them here today with us. And thanks so much for being here with us and everything. And it's going to be very informative, and really look forward to talking to each one of you. Let's start out by going with Jay, first of all, and just tell us, Jay, what your background is. And you've obviously been here in Watauga County for 20 years. I know you've got three children that have going through the school system.
That's
I've seen
right.
some of them play sports there at Watauga High School
That's
in the
right.
past in soccer. Just tell us, if you would, about your history here in Watauga County, if you would.
Yeah, sure. So, so my wife Cindy and I got here as fast as we could, as the saying goes, and we chose to come to Watauga because the safe schools, the environment. We both work at ASU, so having employment here is an important aspect, obviously. We've raised our family here. We've been here 20 years. All of our boys went through Green Valley School, and my youngest is still at the high school. And I've spent a lot of time as a parent active in the classrooms, doing field trips and Christmas plays, and when teachers need somebody, I was one of the people that they would go to. They always need dads to help on those things.
Oh, yeah.
So I would do those. And then I started serving on the PTA out at Green Valley, and I did that for more years than I can remember, Terry.
Yeah.
But as treasurer and president for 2 years. And when you're on the PTA, you really start to see a different side of the school. I mean, all parents love their schools, but PTA loves a little bit special, I think.
Yeah.
I did 7 years on the Watauga Education Foundation, 2 years as president, and that allowed me to get into all of the schools in the county. So I met teachers and principals at all the schools. I got to interact with children on various projects at the schools, and also got to know the people at the central office, the administration.
Yeah.
I've been a Sunday school teacher, a youth soccer coach. I mentor students because I'm a computer science professor at Appalachian, and I bring that expertise to the classrooms, help teachers, and I help students. So.
Yeah. Tell us about that mentoring program there.
So STEM is a big buzzword in education right now. It stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And we know that we need to increase student learning in those areas. And so that's one of my areas. So I have workshops for teachers in the summer. Those are funded by Google. And so we invite regional teachers to come in. And then those teachers will often follow up and ask me to come talk to their classes. So I do that frequently. I've worked with a number of teachers here in Watauga to do a course for an entire marking period. And then I do a lot of one-on-one mentoring with students where I'll go and meet with them for an hour during a course. They'll pull out of maybe a math course or a science course and meet with me for an hour. And we'll learn how to program. We'll talk about how computers work. I kind of let their interests sort of guide what they learn.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's really exciting to be with the kids like that and see them start to learn those kinds of things.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So you've been really actively involved for a lot of years in the school system.
Yes, sir. Yes, I have.
Yeah, that's great. Ronnie, tell us about yourself. Obviously, you graduated from North Carolina State, and
Yep.
and you've been up here. You have a young daughter that's preschool right now,
Yeah.
and it's very important to you, isn't it, to help along with the schools as she's getting ready to go to school?
Absolutely. Got a long time vested interest because we plan fully to go public school the entire way. It's very important to us. Just tell you a little bit about who I am. I came to Watauga County about 10 years ago. I followed my wife up here. She was in school. And at that point, I came to grad school and decided we made an intentional effort not to go. We didn't want to go anywhere else. This is where we wanted to be. The system was fantastic. My wife was in ASU for education, and just fell in love with the individuals she met who were teachers in the local area. And so we did everything we could. She struggled, and for a couple of years to get in the door is that fantastic of a system. She had 3.5 years doing interims and so forth. But she's had a great experience with the school system up here. So I came up here and started grad school. I knew that I wanted to teach as well, but I wanted to do it at the community college level.
Yeah.
And wanted to make sure that I was in some way supporting all the students at the community college, the ones who didn't know exactly where they were going to go or what skill they were going to do, And but I went through the community college, and I felt like that was I had some really good teachers to pull me through and support me and encourage me, and I really just wanted to be that as well. So ended up when I came to grad school, wasn't sure if I could teach or not. I wasn't sure if I was man enough material to become a teacher. I felt that strong about what they do. And ended up working for the Western Youth Network for 7 years. Most of that time was spent as the director of their substance abuse prevention program. Really got to work with middle school kids in the area and all the schools, and got to learn a lot about diversity in this community. You know, you think there's not diversity, but it's all over the place. It might not be what you talk about in looking at somebody, but when you're talking about the amount of money or funding or how long someone's been here in this county, there really is differences. And so learned a lot about that. And, you know, just running for the school board because I really have found throughout, you know, working at WIN and Western Youth Network and building up some coalitions in the local area, that there was a lot of need and support for the schools. And I've always kind of been a mentality of to help in some way. And I just felt like this was the next pathway to assist and help our schools.
Yeah, that's great. So, Kurt, you came up about 16 years ago and at ASU now, and obviously trained at Duke. And tell us about the reason, because obviously you brought your children up here because you knew how great the schools were.
Sure. So my wife and I had every intention to stay in North Carolina, and we began to look around for places to raise our family. And the obvious choice when you start looking at the features of the high country, Boone made the most sense. And I was lucky enough to get a job offer, obviously, at ASU, so that was fortunate. So really, chiefly among our reasons was the school system. And when we were looking at the numbers online, it just became obvious. And so we have not been disappointed. We've been very impressed from the very beginning. In fact, always been very impressed with the teachers in Watauga County, and had the good fortune to teach Ronnie's wife in class some years ago, and she, I think, exemplifies the kind of quality of teaching that we've enjoyed here. And so we've, again, been blessed and received some of the most amazing instruction from the very beginning. Both of my kids have gone all the way through, and from kindergarten till now, been just consistently amazed at the quality of teaching and want to see to it that that's protected, which is the chief reason that I'm running for the school board. And in fact, in terms of my professional work, trying to teach ASU students how to serve young people is my life's work, and mostly in the area of mental health. And so I've been very fortunate to be involved with Watauga and some other regional school systems in developing an infrastructure for the provision of mental health for our students. In fact, in the programs that we've been developing, the students and families do not pay out of pocket for service. We've managed to, through other means, provide those services at no cost. We fund it through other avenues. So again, you know, very invested in public education and making sure that folks that need not just obviously the educational support, but for the things that we know might impede educational success, like having mental health impairments, trying to also remove those barriers to learning through direct intervention, prevention in the schools.
So all three of you have been very actively involved working with young people, and so that's a love that you have and why you want to get involved here with the Watauga County Board of Education. So
right.
Tell us what now as you want to be on the Board of Education, tell us what really is your passion here to try to help.
Well, you know, I really just feel like, and we've talked about it, we have great schools here in Watauga County, and we have for a really long time. The SAT scores at the high school are #2 in the state for public schools. And I tell voters when I'm out knocking on doors, that doesn't mean they learned everything in their last year, right? That's a culmination of all their years. So the most important thing, I think, for the board is to maintain the level of excellence that we're at and continue to kind of inch our way up to the very top. Now, there's a lot of things that kind of contribute to that. And you know, one of those things is making sure we have adequate funding, that we have the resources that our teachers need. Another thing would be to, to make sure that our teachers and our principals are empowered to be able to do what they feel is best in their classrooms, that they don't feel bogged down with a lot of assessment. That's the thing right now that's kind of killing them. They feel overwhelmed on. It's a burden. So those are the kind of things that, you start thinking about lots of individual kinds of issues, but they all support the idea of just continuing to be an excellent public school system.
Yeah, and before we started the show here, you were talking about respect and trust for the teachers.
Right. So there's been for a number of years kind of a national dialogue about failing schools and needing school reform. And that's true in some places, particularly in inner urban city kind of areas. But Watauga County doesn't really have that same problem. But there's this feeling that people have that schools aren't working right. And so our teachers begin to feel that. I mean, don't you? I mean, you're married to a teacher, Ronnie, so you know this, that they bring that home, that people are walking around talking about teachers poorly and talking about schools not working. So we need to communicate that back out to our community, that our teachers are valued, that they are professionals, and that we respect them. So it's going to be a big role, I think, for the board and our new administration with the new superintendent to sort of restore that, Ronnie, you call it the morale, right, of our teachers. So
that's what I was going to ask you, Ronnie, there, because you talked about teaching morale.
Absolutely. I mean, when we look at teacher morale, I mean, just think about it. If you were at a job and you felt like that every day you were under not only a microscope for accountability, that's one thing, but to know that there's these perceptions of negativity that it goes beyond, that the schools are failing and you're part of the reason it's failing. When you walk into that building, it's a heavy burden that you carry. And our teachers, I mean, we've got some phenomenal teachers, and they really do the best they can at not in some way, shape, or form trying to impact what they do. But if we walk into our job and we have that sensation, whether we want to or not, it's going to impact how we are going to interact with our kids or the children in that classroom. But I see the dedication. I mean, I spoke to a lot of teachers throughout this campaign, including my wife. Of course, I have to talk to her. She keeps her mouth shut pretty good, though. But the reality is, you just kind of get this sense and this feel that, what do we do? Is this really for me? You see a lot of questions, and they're the same ones that go home and spend 4, 5, 6, 7 hours at night doing grades or lesson planning. And the reason they're doing lesson planning is because they had no time that day. Their 25-minute planning time was taken up getting ready for the next assessment or the next test. And so they have to do all those things. And then their family suffers and things like that. And it really weighs on them. So that morale, even when they don't want it and they want to do the best that they can do, unfortunately, I just think that it's very difficult to fight that or get away from that, even when, you feel like you're doing good at it.
Yeah, my background was as a teacher and a coach also, so I know what you mean. Like you're talking about a situation where you really need support all the way up, because nowadays things have changed somewhat. The students, families are a little bit different. Teachers are a little bit more isolated, aren't they? A little bit more on an island to themselves. And Kurt, don't you think they need to be supported through the whole system there?
We have every reason to be optimistic right now, I think, with the new superintendent, with his attitude towards the entire operation, his leadership. I think it's a great time to really capitalize on that and really help to not just sustain what we've been accomplishing well for a number of years, but even achieving even greater heights and trying to push the envelope a little bit, further protect teachers, educators in the service of our kids. And so I think as much as it's true that there's lots of reasons that we need to be concerned, and there are, I think also capitalizing on what's really working well and taking it to the next level, I think would be an excellent agenda.
And you mentioned about funding, because obviously funding is key for teacher morale. That's a key part of it.
Right.
And you mentioned about maybe looking for creative ways to bring in some more money. Tell us about that.
Well, it seems to me that we should be really creative in how we approach these challenges, and one of those ways could be further investigation of external sources of funding from the federal grant system. The U.S. Department of Education often offers funding streams that at least have a cycle of 4 to 5 years with the potential of renewal. So although it's not a permanent source of funding, it can be sustained through various streams. And again, I think we've had some success in Watauga County achieving such funding streams. I think we could probably even be more successful. So I would like to investigate that if I'm elected, to see if we can at least supplement or expand our current ways of subsidizing some of these programs, whether it be for bullying prevention, trying to understand a little more about how to approach social media, which has been a challenge for our youth, would be a couple of examples. Certainly retention of students, funding grants that are around those areas, public health issues, depression, suicide, substance abuse, would all be fruitful areas to investigate to see what we can accomplish.
Yeah. And Jay, you talked about, go ahead.
Well, and another funding stream for capital projects would be the North Carolina education money from the lottery, from the education lottery. And it turns out, if you go look at the numbers on that, Watauga County has not gotten their fair share of those dollars. So the superintendent is putting together some proposals to apply for more of those funds. So there's another revenue stream that we need to be a little more proactive in targeting and going after. Because we do have some capital projects that are going to come up. Some of the schools, particularly at Valley Crucis, there's quite a bit of infrastructure problem there. And our capital fund balance has been decreased. We put roofs on 2 schools. So some of these schools are aging a little bit. The high school, of course, is a new building. It's in pretty good shape. There's always little bits to do, but some of those elementary schools are starting to wear down a little bit. And so we are going to have to look at additional funding streams.
And Jay, you mentioned Pioneer Academy earlier when we were talking out there, and I think, you were mentioning about the importance of continuing that forward, and I would think, Watauga County is still a little bit probably unusual in terms of its kindergarten through 8th is in one, whereas if you look around at other counties, most of the time the 6th, 7th, and 8th goes off to middle school. So there is a big transition in Watauga County between 8th grade and 9th grade, and you think it's very important to keep that academy strong, don't you? Yeah,
I do. I was fortunate enough to have a conversation with the director of the Pioneer Academy out at the high school, and it's really all about that transition, especially from the smaller schools on the western end of the county where their class sizes are a little bit smaller, and then they come into the big high school. And if we're not careful, what happens is some of those students will drop out. And so Pioneer Academy is a program to make sure that doesn't happen. And it was completely eliminated out of the budget. It used to be funded by the system, but it was completely eliminated. And the director out there now has been able to get it back in place, but even this past year had to pull back 1 class worth of the Pioneer Academy. So that is definitely something I think that would benefit the students, and we ought to look hard at how we can make expanding that work.
Well, I think it's a great idea, but another thing that's true is that the transition for all the students has been something that needs beefing up, and I think the superintendent is now engaged in conversations, chiefly with student services, the social workers in particular, trying to create better transition, because we know that a lot of these young people who do make that shift from a very small, somewhat remote school to the bigger high school can be quite a trick. And so I think right now with Paul Holden, with Dr. Elliott, with the social workers in particular, working very hard to make sure that we're serving our young people more effectively in that transition that can really be the way to prevent a lot of the pitfalls that you see when they first get to the high school.
Yeah, so they're not lost in the shuffle kind of as they go into that big school. This is a big school now, and it's a beautiful school, but it is a big transition. Ronnie, we had some of the county commissioner candidates in, and Barbara Kinsey was one of those, and she was, has been on the Board of Education. But they were mentioning that there's nothing you can do about raising teacher salaries, because that's a state thing. But there is certain ways that we can help to raise it in different ways, like supplements and things like that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, when we look at funding, obviously it is a piece of the puzzle to help incentivize and actually produce teacher morale, increase teacher morale. Locally, obviously, state level funding, they are the ones that dictate levels for teachers and what they're going to come in for salary. But supplements are a big deal. And when you look at supplements in this county, it is a bit scary to say we live in one of the highest income or one of the highest cost of living areas, and our teachers are receiving about $1,000 less than the average North Carolina supplement for the teachers. And that's kind of alarming when you consider the cost of living, because that just really amplifies that cost of living and what teachers are not getting. So really what we have to do is that it's a county thing. We have to work with our county commissioners, and we have to be able to have a good rapport with each one of them, be able to have that conversation and say, we've got Tennessee right next door, we've got Virginia right up the road. We need to worry about, our teachers not staying just because they're going to get a substantial increase by moving across the line. They could live here and still work in that other community. And, these are some of our best. They're going to take our best. They're not going to come in here and try and just take whatever they can get. They're going to take our best. And I think we have to, as a county, recognize that we are investing in our community when we invest in education. There's no other way to increase, cost of living or increase even the economic development of an area unless you're using education as some kind of predictor. And so when we look at that, education is at the foundation. So hopefully we can have a dialogue, maybe even turn it into economics if we have to, about how that will support local development, small businesses, and things like that.
Yeah, Kurt, talking about creative ideas, funding, you mentioned to me earlier that other school districts might find ways to get other money in. Would that be important to something like this, with giving more money to the teachers?
Yeah, again, just trying to, leave no stone unturned to investigate possibilities. And so again, having someone, and whether this is within the purview of a school board member, but simply being on the lookout for these kinds of funding streams would be, and really the diversity of what's available is quite extraordinary. And so whether it's from capital improvements to something more specific that's programmatic, I think we could probably seek out such funding streams. And I would imagine there are folks in the central office who also have some experience with at least participating in grant writing. Having ASU here as an additional resource would be helpful in that regard.
But you said you were able to do with ASU to do your program without
Right.
costing any money to the parents. So that obviously is a way that you found to do that.
Yeah, it's really a diverse funding model, and so we also try to do it where if we run out of a certain fund, we've got backup funds to keep the program going, because that inevitably happens. And so we try to stagger the funding streams in a way that continues to support it. A lot of that's in-kind contribution from faculty, from the university, to continue to support these programs.
Yeah. Jay, and talking to go ahead.
Well, I quickly wanted, Terry, to make sure that, your viewers, I'm sure, are seeing some of the advertisements for other political campaigns, right, on TV. So one of the things they're hearing is that teachers just got a great big raise. And so we're talking about teacher funding. And so they may be a little bit confused, didn't teachers just get a big raise? So if we could just take a minute to kind of make sure that they understand what's really going on there. So the state did give teachers a raise, and most of the claims are somewhere around 7%. But that's if you do Raleigh computations, right? Raleigh economics. If you calculate it the way a teacher around their kitchen table is going to calculate it, which I did earlier this week, it's only about a 4.8% raise. So it's a raise, and that's great, and they're all glad to get it. But it also is disproportionate. So new teachers, early teachers, entering teachers got a very significant raise. And so we are able to compete with some of our neighboring states. But the downside is that experienced teachers got a very small raise. And so there's almost a disincentive to kind of continue to stay in the profession. And so those are the ones that are leaving are the experienced teachers. And so what we're going to end up with is a situation where we don't have that sort of good balance between experienced teachers and young teachers who are energetic and need some mentoring and need some guidance. So, I'm a little worried, and 10 years down the road, what our teacher population might look like. So I just wanted to make sure your viewers were aware of that they did get a raise, but it's disproportionate does not favor experience, and isn't the same number that's being floated out there in most of the headlines.
And if I could I add something
Yeah,
to what
sure.
Jay's
Yeah.
saying? So the truth in our family is my wife also works for Watauga County Schools. She's worked for the county for 12 years. And the truth is her raise, because she's more experienced, is actually less than 1%, plus something called longevity pay, which she did receive as an incentive to be, a consistent, loyal employee, has now been taken away. In fact, those funds are often used to subsidize some of the other aspects of the raise structure. So she's been penalized for being an experienced member of the Watauga County Schools.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty unfair.
Yeah.
In
I
fact,
spoke to several teachers that's the case. I mean, so it's definitely, and I think unfortunately we see this fitting, and the younger teachers see it as a negative. They say, oh my, I don't, certainly I'm happy about a raise, but then again, my mentor, the one who was with me and helped me, bring me along, they're the ones really not getting a raise at all. I mean, we're seeing almost 0.2% or 5% for some of these folks. And, this 7% number they're throwing out there really is misleading a lot of people, unfortunately.
And talking to the county commissioner candidates, I think the real overall theme was that everybody needed to work together. Like John F. Kennedy said, a rising tide raises all ships. And so it's very key for you guys to be working with, isn't it, with the county commissioners. Anything that goes along, it has to be a great working relationship, doesn't it?
well, the school board has no revenue generating authority, so yeah, we get the money from the state, which we don't have any say at all in, other than being able to vote for people at the state office level. It's number of students is what determines how much money you get. Locally, we can put a budget together and go to the county commissioners and ask for money. So we've done that. In fact, this past year, the school board asked for additional money for a teacher supplement. Some of the commissioners were in favor of that, but the majority were not. So we'll always have to have that dialogue. That's just the nature of how those two boards are set up.
So it's very key then that you guys work together with them and have a great working relationship. Isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as we look ahead now, and what gets you excited then is our last question here. What gets you excited thinking about if you were on the Board of Education this coming time? What would you be thinking about wanting to do and the passion that you have for it?
Well, again, my background wanting to be in this is as a parent, as a PTA kind of leader, as a community volunteer. So that's kind of where my passion is coming from. I've been invested this way for 20 years. So I'm just really eager to get on the board, to start learning the nitty-gritty of some of what they do. I mean, I know a lot about how the system works, but I know I don't know everything. So I'm really just, I'm a passionate learner myself, and I'm really eager to get on there. Again, I know we have a great school system, and I want to maintain that level and start to continue to inch forward. So I'm really eager to get started working in December. Yeah.
So Ronnie, your passion?
Tell you what, my passion has a lot to do with, I think, my background of being a servant. I just feel like that this is a calling, a servant that I could do and support our kids. I want to be accessible. Part of what I see myself being is accessible for folks, and that would include parents, teachers, administrators. Whenever morale is low, I think just being present is always the start of something good. And so being present, being a volunteer in the schools in some way, shape, or form, and let them know that the people who are at the top, the people who are, the ones kind of that buffer between us and that state legislature, they got their back, that they're there to support them, and we'll do everything they can. And not to say that's never been present, but that should continue as well. And that's my passion.
Yeah.
That's
Your
my
passion?
Well, I think passion for our present and our future, which is our kids. So it's really easy to get behind that.
Yeah.
And not just looking at my own children, but children all around the county who really deserve, more than anything else, our best effort to advocate for them. So that's my passion, and certainly so public service through advocacy was what I would say.
Yeah. That's great. So is it all right if anyone has questions, any of the viewers have questions, can they give you all a call? Because we have your telephone numbers here and we'll put them up on the screen. And,
Great.
But it's all right if they give you a call and ask
Absolutely.
any questions? and
Absolutely,
everything?
yes.
Absolutely, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what we're here for.
That's great. Well, I tell you, really enjoyed talking to y'all. Been very informative and enjoyed it. Thanks, Kurt. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Thanks,
Thank
Ronnie.
you very much.
Thanks, Jay.
Terry, thank you.
Yeah, thanks
Appreciate
very
it.
much. Appreciate it. It's been great for the viewers, and thanks so much for coming in. And look forward to wish you guys all the best in this coming election.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you
Good
back
luck, Ron.
here
Sure.
with more of the Mountain
Amen.
Television Network.